Welcome to the Wired for Success podcast, your show for ambitious, mission-driven entrepreneurs who understand that there's more to entrepreneurship than finding the latest flash-in-the-pan strategies, who understand that in order to build your empire, you need a solid foundation. I wholeheartedly believe that entrepreneurship is the biggest self-development journey you can be on, and it's my mission to help you make that journey easier. I help you transition from a struggling, overwhelmed, and overworked entrepreneur to the relaxed and confident CEO and conscious creator of your dream life that you are meant to be. In this show, I bring together the very best from science, self-development, and entrepreneurship to set you up for sustainable success. I share my own experiences and knowledge as a molecular biologist and mindset coach for high-achieving entrepreneurs, and I interview other top scientists, coaches, and entrepreneurs so that you can get all the expert tips and strategies to help you trust yourself more, worry less, make better decisions, be more productive, stay focused and organized, and build your legacy. Hi, I'm Claudia Garbutt, the scientist and mindset coach behind the show, and you're listening to the Wired for Success podcast. Hey everyone, and welcome back to a brand new episode of the Wired for Success podcast. Today it's my absolute pleasure to welcome Marci Marra, a management consultant, transformational coach, and member of the Forbes Coaches Council, who works with organizations as well as with individuals to help them define and achieve their goals. As a management consultant, she has had the opportunity to career coach and mentor people at all levels, from C-level to fresh out of college, which I think puts her in an excellent position to share some valuable tips with us today. So thank you so much, Marci, for taking the time to do this interview with me today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to have this conversation with you and to share things about my learnings and my expertise with this broad audience today.
Yay! So let's get started. I always like to get started by asking my guests to tell us a little bit about their background and about their entrepreneurial journey, because I find it so utterly fascinating how people choose their path. So why don't you tell us how you got started as a management consultant and what motivated you back then and what motivates you today?
I love your words, choose our path. Do we ever really choose our path? I think that in itself is an interesting question because I honestly don't feel like I chose my path. I feel like I've been very, very fortunate. I've had some great mentors, but much so that my path chose me. And sometimes I had to have a bit of self-awareness to recognize what was actually happening at the moment. And that's really how I end up in consulting. Is consulting gives you this broad breadth of being able to take on new challenges and new projects. And it really is a flex of your resilience and your ability to change rapidly. And that is personally one of my strengths and one of the things that I found pleasure in. But I really learned that after having an epic failure.
Ooh.
So this idea about chasing success and chasing a certain salary and the dollar amounts, and what did that personally and professionally do to me, created that negative spiral. And I failed, and I stepped out of the work that I was doing altogether. And this is where entrepreneurship comes in. And I was like, I'm going to go do something totally different. And I'm just going to take this break. And doing that, what I found is I really was an entrepreneur. I created a business out of practically nothing. It was outside of my area of expertise. I found immense joy in that because I had this connection to people. And it really reconnected me with myself. And then my path was like, I should now return to consulting, and I'm going to do this with a totally different lens. And I'm going to talk about people and our authenticity and how are we grateful for things and how do we be compassionate leaders. And I'm going to help create fresh out of college to really seasoned professionals to just be basically nicer human beings. And so that has truly been my path. And as part of that, I recognized, thanks to a client who I'm having lunch with, who says, I will never turn down a lunch from you. And I know that we have lunches because you want to know what's going on in our business and you want to sell more things, but I get an hour of free coaching from you. And it's like, oh, interesting. And so I thought I should really think about solidifying those skills. And that's when I decided that I would go down the path of becoming a certified
Mm.
coach. And the two just come together so naturally. But that's a little bit about my path choosing me, because I've had these little things that have shown up that said, you should try this or you should do that. And I've listened to that intuition, and it hasn't let me down.
Yeah, I love that, how you could see and seize the opportunity when it presented itself. So, in your own words, how would you describe the transformation that you help people provide either within an organization or the people, like the individuals you work with?
And the answer for that is much the same. For it's obviously a much bigger scale when we're talking about organizations and some very large enterprise organizations, but it still comes down to the people. And so it starts with each one of us individually. And how do we end up in situations where we need help? It's often that we have some limiting belief, or we have been somewhere taught that we shouldn't show up a certain way, or that we have this fear. And so it's really working with either a single person or a group of leaders. It might be a group of stakeholders, to start to break down what is the barrier to how they see success for the
Mm.
future. And is that based on fear? And is the fear real? So
Yeah.
really simple tools when a company says we can't do that because we failed in the past. And it's like, well, is that true now? And you see this look of, well, I don't know. Well, let's explore that then. And let's just deconstruct not so much what has happened in the past, but how we look towards the future. And we spend a lot of time thinking about, oh, I could have done that different. I could have changed that. And that's okay. Like, there's obviously learning in that. But if we spend more of our energy towards how we want things to look,
Mhm.
and does it matter? Like, do the actions that you do today matter in a month from now or a year from now? And that will also free people up to take risks. Because often, if you've held yourself back and you say, how important is that tomorrow? People say, it's pretty important.
Mm.
How important it is a month? They'll say, yeah, not as important. How important it is a year? It's like, I won't even remember this day in a year. So then why not take a risk and try something? And that's some of the transformational work at a very high level that I do to move people forward.
Yeah, that's really great. Just this change of perspective that can make all the difference. So from your experience, what would you say are let's say, the top three roadblocks that you've encountered over and over again that just stop things from running smoothly within an organization, like a bigger organization?
Yeah, I am going to go back to fear, because I think that there's fear of taking any risks. There's fear of not being successful. And we see that a lot at the executive level, at the presidents and the C-suite level, that will
Mhm.
hold companies back. There's also the fear of taking that risk because you make yourself vulnerable. And at that point, you put yourself up the way that we all view it individually, right? Like, I'm going to expose myself, that I may not know all the answers, and then I may fail. And so we create this mask of not being authentic. But really, most of the time, we're also focused on ourselves, that nobody's paying any attention to exactly what that leader is doing. And so that work often is the work that happens. And we can look at some really large organizations. I live in the Northwest, and we have some very large software companies here. And we can talk about the shift of leaders over time, and a leader that has a persona about knowing all of the answers, and how the company didn't do very well. And a new leader comes in and says, let's talk about compassion, and let's be vulnerable and be authentic with each other. And all of a sudden, the company culture completely changes. And,
Mhm.
those are, I'm not going to name a name, but people can figure out who that company is. And that's just this huge turning point. And it really does start with leadership.
Mm.
There are things that can happen grassroots from the ground up, but if you do not have a leader that's living the values and showing those things, the company will still struggle.
Yeah, I totally believe that. It sets the tone for the entire company, and it creates an environment where people can either thrive, or they keep playing small because they're also living in fear. Um,
Absolutely.
so,
Yeah, the difference between is your team willing to take a risk to innovate?
mhm.
And know that if they fail, like they may fail fast and you have learnings from that, or are they so afraid that if they fail, they will be reprimanded or it will be reflected in a negative way? Like that, just that simple thing is how we get companies that constantly innovate and create. And during COVID, I think we saw that some companies pivoted very quickly. Like, I lost my audience. How do I go and change and do something different? And then there's other companies so sad that weren't able to pivot. And it does stem from the leadership.
Yeah, probably does. So when you compare working with organizations to working with individuals, do you see the same challenges come up, or what would you say are the three most common blocks that you've encountered in working with individuals?
I do see the same challenges. I do have to approach them differently. I'm not going to sit with a CEO and have that person talk to me about what was it like to grow up in their household and what's their relationship with their parents, which I will do with an
Mhm.
individual because a lot of things do form really early in our personalities and our social styles. And so those formative years are important and they're great clues to
Mm.
what might be holding somebody back, or where do they have unconscious bias that we need to explore. And when I'm working with an organization, it needs to stay to the business level, unless, of course, you're having that conversation over lunch or you're at a happy hour and it's a little more relaxed. But really talking about still some of those basic things, like a year from now, what would you like people to remember about you? How did you lead through this situation? And how are you thinking about the future? Are you focused on self, or are you focused on we? Is it about the community? And really being able to take some leaders too that have had to fight really hard to get to where they are, and have had to spend a lot of their personal time and may have sacrificed time with family to have to be able to say, this is no longer my time to focus on me. I have to focus on the greater good. And being able to make that type of transformation too will make a big difference in an organization. I mean, we can all feel it when we are with leaders that truly care about the people they are leading versus leaders who are very focused on what's in it for me.
Yeah, that's so true. You can feel the connection that's either there, or the disconnect that's there. And would you say that, just circling back a little bit to what you said earlier, would you say that working with a bigger organization is about helping each individual inside this organization to grow, or is it more about really changing the culture within the organization that then allows each one to show up differently?
So it's both. Culture doesn't change overnight because somebody wants culture change.
Sure.
I can come in and do an assessment and recognize improvements for culture, things that we could do, like small things that make changes. But culture in a large organization changes by every single person in that organization changing. And so it's really working with stakeholders, change agents, sponsorship throughout the organization. There's so many different facets to it, but it does come down to all of the individuals coming together to create this sense of belonging, which is how culture is really identified.
Yeah, this building of a community that all work together for a shared purpose, that is something magical, right?
It absolutely is, and you can feel it when you belong to it. And people, I don't think, always recognize that, or the the immense gift that that is when you work for an organization that has that level of connectedness and culture and community and shared values, until you step out of it. And then there's this void for people, and they can look back and say, that was so incredible.
Mhm.
How do we find that again? And that's when you try to go to a company and say, like, we need to change the values. Well, changing the values, if people still aren't living it, just doesn't change the culture.
Yeah, so true. I mean, I guess what building a community is about giving everyone the environment they need to show up authentically, to just be themselves and be the best version of themselves. So I would love you to talk a little bit more about about the importance of authenticity for being a great leader. And do you think it's an essential quality for every good leader?
I think it's absolutely critical. In this conversation, as we talk about culture and feeling like you belong to something and connected to a higher purpose, how can you possibly feel like you belong or you connect if you don't truly know people? And I think there's a level of professionalism. I understand that we put on like this, a little bit of this, like I'm going to be a little bit more polished, but you're still going to see who people are if they're truly being authentic. And that means that they live their values, they genuinely listen to people. So that whole thing about when somebody's talking, are you really paying attention to them, or are you listening to them so that you're ready to respond to them? And all of those pieces go into that great leadership. And when I look at leaders throughout history, the great leaders are the leaders that do not show up 100% perfect, because if you try to show up 100% perfect, you're not being a human being. You're not being authentic. So you're wearing a mask and people don't really know you. And so that gauge about how true are you to yourself is a really good test. It's a litmus test. Do people act the same way or close enough to the same way at home with friends and family as they do in the workplace? And that's also a sign that you can see that in company cultures, where you see companies that host things when people can bring their families. And that's all part of the community. And that's when you can see that people are truly authentic.
Yeah.
Without authenticity, you remove this ability for people to predict and to know how you're going to behave. Because if you're not being authentic, there's no consistency.
Yeah, that's so true. That's the very important thing to keep in mind, I think, because yeah, it creates more uncertainty for all the people around you, which makes it harder for them to show up as their best version of themselves. So yeah, I totally agree with you. In addition to that, what do you think are other essential qualities that a great leader needs to have? And can you share just maybe some practical tips with our audience of ambitious entrepreneurs that will help them develop those essential leadership skills and qualities?
Compassion, I think, is absolutely critical. I think you can read a lot of leadership, entrepreneur books too about empathy.
Hmm.
And empathy is very important, and it is a step there, but compassion is where you make the difference. And compassion is really coming along and helping. So I love to look at this: sympathy, empathy, and compassion. So sympathy is you come along a person who's fallen in a hole and you say, wow, that's really terrible, I'm sorry for you, and you keep walking. And empathy is you come along and you say, wow, I'm so sorry that that's happened to you, I hope somebody can help you. And then compassion is somebody comes along and they're like, wow, let me jump in the hole, I've been there before and I'm going to help you get out. And that's really what we need from people trying to inspire others. And so if you think about leadership, it is all about creating this inspiration and people wanting to follow you, because who are you leading if nobody's willing to follow you?
That's
So
true.
there's definitely that piece that compassion, and throughout the years, compassion has been underrated. And as women leaders, that's a challenging one, because there are times that we are told we are too soft,
Mm.
or, oh, you're more compassionate because you're a woman. And trust me, I've lived through this in my career, where you have to try to figure out what is that right place. And I've held back compassion to not show up weak.
Oh, yeah.
And looking back, this is all part of my great failure. Looking back, that was such a mistake because it wasn't authentic to me.
Mm.
My compassion is very authentic to me, and it's a part of who I am. And that's what people expect from me now. And
Right.
so that is showing up consistent. another thing that I think is really important for entrepreneurs particularly is to be curious.
Mm.
Constantly be curious. When you're starting a new business and you launch into that space, like you have all this energy and you're curious and you're building something and there's excitement around that. And let's say you hit that milestone and you launch whatever it is that you've been trying to do. Don't stop. Continue to be curious, like constantly learning and growing. We can look at companies that have done that well, like look at Netflix, look at the journey of Netflix, and they never stopped, like constantly be curious and testing things and trying things. And we all know about the success of Netflix, but if you dig into it, there's all kinds of things that they did that they backed out of. Like they went and tried something and like, wow, this isn't going to work, like let's back out really quickly,
Mm.
because they continue to be curious and to really be fluid and willing to try those things. And I think for entrepreneurs, that's just such a critical thing that they need to keep doing. And then, we'll go back to authenticity. Like I cannot say authenticity enough. And then there's also this piece that ties into authenticity is gratitude, like having gratitude along the way of an entrepreneur's journey. There can be very dark days, but to have that moment of just a habit of gratitude, like, so this failed, I didn't get my funding, or this happened, but I'm so grateful that I'm still in this place that I get to try again tomorrow. Things like that will help carry you through, and it will help the people that you are bringing along with you on that journey to stick with it. That will help keep people determined and committed.
That is so true. I love that because that's something that I teach as well, the gratitude piece, because we're naturally programmed to have a negative bias because in our evolution, it was always more important to stay out of danger than it was to appreciate the good stuff. So that's, if we can change that and become aware of all the good things and really cherish them and be grateful for them, then we can turn things around and just enjoy life so much more and not stay in this constant fear and worry all the time. So that's definitely something that I've found very helpful. Yeah.
It is interesting how we evolved from our surroundings of a dinosaur going to bite our heads off, which is, where all of this fight, flight, or freeze has come from. Yet our amygdala in our brain is still the same way it was. Like, why hasn't it evolved to help us have that moment of, wait, I can pause. I can think
Mm,
about this for a second. There's still something good happening here. So I love it that you talk about that too.
yes. Yeah, I think it's just that evolution hasn't been able to keep up with our development. So I mean, it takes a little longer to create new structures, but our societies have changed so much just over the last couple of 100 years. Just when you think about it, I mean, everything has changed, how people live together, how they work together. So it's really been a dramatic change when you think about it.
It absolutely has, but that's an interesting conversation that we could rabbit hole down, because you can think about the dangers that we have now are actually different. Like
Mm,
the evolution, and now like we think about social media, and it gives us opportunities like we're having right now, but it also produces all this additional fear that we didn't have even 20 years ago,
yeah.
with the fake news and all of those other inputs, that we really need to train our brains to ask ourselves, is it real? Does it matter right now? Will it matter in the future? Before we start reacting to them.
So true. I mean, it's so essential to have this focus, or to train us to be more focused and to pay attention to what's important and not to all the other stuff that's not important, but it's still out there. And I think that's becoming one of the most important skills, to really focus on the things that are important right now and not to get distracted by all the shiny objects and all the opportunities and possibilities, but to really stay on track with what you want to achieve. Now that you have helped so many other people find their purpose and define their success, what does success look like for you? And what's the next milestone for getting closer to that vision of success?
That's always an interesting question. What does success look like? And for me personally, what success looks like now is obviously very different than it did, 20, 30 years ago. And my earlier self certainly would have defined success as, a big house and a nice salary and a fancy job title and all of those things. And to be honest, we all know that those aren't the things that
Mm.
truly bring us real joy and meaning in our life. And so connecting to that part of myself, success for me is being able to continue to work with others and to help them find their own purpose. And I really see my purpose as helping others find theirs, helping them define what success looks like for them, and really being able to find that place where they do have meaning and joy in their life. It just creates a sense of overall well-being. And so that's really what that looks like for me. And what my next milestone is, really is to focus more on opportunities like what you and I are doing right now, and sharing some really simple messages and tips that people can embrace, doing speaking engagements. I have a book in the works about all of the topics that we've been talking about, and really just spending my energy doing that. And that's really where my passion is. And as you can see, I'm in a vocal booth, which is in my house, which makes things super convenient. My husband is also trying to launch a new purpose and career for himself. So we're on this journey together, which is also really amazing to be
Yeah,
able to have a partner to share those things with.
oh, yeah, that's so cool. I think a lot of people will be envious and will be jealous to hear that, because I've heard of a lot of people that have unsupportive husbands or unsupportive wives. And so you're really lucky to have someone who supports you and who's on the same mission as you are. So
It's a huge blessing. I'm very grateful.
I bet you are. So before you go, can you please tell our listeners what's the best way to find you online and to connect with you?
Yeah, absolutely. And it really depends on our listeners' preferences. So I spend quite a bit of time on LinkedIn, and I do typically post some tip every day. And I occasionally will share videos. And I'm also on Facebook. I do have a page on Facebook where I'm starting to produce content directly for Facebook. And I have a website, so marcimarra.com. And you can find links to all of those things off of my website. And then you'll also see that I have a tab for the pre-release of my book there.
Yes, awesome. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for taking the time to do this interview today and for sharing your insights. I really appreciate it. And I think there were a lot of things that people could listen and take away from this interview today.
Well, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure having this conversation with you. And I'm very grateful for the time that we've had to spend together.
Oh, thank you. And I wish you a wonderful rest of your day and talk to you soon.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to the Wired for Success podcast. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you did, please take a sec to rate and review my show. It would mean the world to me, because you would help me reach more entrepreneurs like yourself who would love this show. If you'd like to learn more about creating a widely successful business without sacrificing your health, relationships, or sanity, make sure to stick around and subscribe so you don't miss out on any future episodes. And if you think, heck yes, I want to listen to each and every one of these amazing episodes, but my day just doesn't have enough hours, well, if that's you, I have something special for you. To help me spread the word about this podcast, I've created a contest and I'm giving away some super cool prizes for those of you who take a sec to subscribe, rate, and review the show. And one of the amazing prizes that you can win is to watch me create my brand new Get Your Life Back Productivity Powerhouse course that teaches entrepreneurs how to win back 1 to 2 hours of precious time each day so that they can do all the things they love. I'll later sell that course for 997 euros, but as a thank you for supporting my podcast launch, you'll get to watch as I create it for free. And just like that, you will have enough time to listen to each and every Wired for Success episode. Woohoo! To find out more about the contest and the other amazing prizes, go to www.wiredforsuccess.solutions/launch-contest. See you next time.